Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, again, the mainstream media has been trying to scare you by hyperfixating on a couple negative days of the stock market, but exactly like I've been saying, this is a macroeconomics play, and Scott Bessent is the macroeconomics guy. You gotta look at the big picture. And when you do look at the big picture, it seems as though the Trump administration is doing exactly what they're intending. The intention has been clear: to realign the global economy, to put America first, to squeeze China. And well, now that seems to be exactly what's happening. You know, the media is going on and on, claiming that we're supposedly the ones that are losing out. But where's the losing? Other than a couple bad days in the stock market, we've seen billions, at this point probably over $1 trillion of investment pour into the country. Inflation's down, the markets have totally rebounded, things seem pretty stable. We might see a little bit of turbulence as we shift away from China here, but supposedly we're losing. You know, it's funny that they keep saying that, because the only nation that I see continuously taking L's here is China. Ooh, China is losing bigly, folks. And well, they just lost Apple. Donald Trump's plan is clearly working, China is feeling the heat, and America is positioning itself stronger than ever. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so a couple days ago we covered how the Trump administration announced that they were finalizing a brand new trade deal with India. Then of course on top of that, to add insult to injury for the Chinese, India announced that they were going to slap a 12% tariff on cheap Chinese steel imports. And now to make matters worse, boom, take a look at what we got here. Apple is announcing that they're shifting their manufacturing out of China and now into India. This is absolutely massive, and of course you got a bunch of doomers online on both sides claiming that this somehow isn't a win. It's still outsourcing, it's not bringing the jobs back home, it's just shifting them from China to India. But the people who are saying that are completely missing the point. Look, the simple reality is that not all manufacturing is going to be able to come back home, and I don't think that that was ever the goal. Certain parts of the economy simply have to be outsourced. They'll always be outsourced. That's just how participating in a global economy works. The goal isn't to isolate America. Some production is going to have to come from foreign sources. And that's still part of the Trump plan. It's still part of the equation, especially when it comes to key industries of national importance and national security. There's always been two goals: bring jobs back home, and then of course, cut China out of the equation and move production to fairer, better partners who will actually respect global trade practices, again, unlike China. And that's exactly what's happening, folks. China is getting absolutely wrecked right now. They're losing major contracts, losing supply chains, losing leverage. You know, they thought they had a chokehold on American companies, that no one could afford to move, but guess what? I guess the Chinese government is finding out real quick that their little grip wasn't as strong as they thought it was. China's economy is in a seriously precarious situation right now. You know, despite all the state media propaganda that you're seeing all over social media, and I'm sure you are, they're making it seem as if they're not scared at all, this doesn't affect them at all, and America stands to lose. But the reality is, they're in free fall. Just take a look at this piece from CNN.
On the whiteboard, this is something you pointed out. Okay, it's something called blank sailing. Okay, usually it's full of cargo on the top. Beginning of the year, these ships leaving Asia, 0% of them were skipping ports. They were going to every port. They were picking up what they had. Containers were full. 100%. Okay, now 40%. These are the numbers you're pointing to, Dan. As many as 40% of these ships, okay,
bypassing ports, and
bypassing ports. So
inventory is down 40%.
And ships have to go when they have to go. You can't just sit around and wait. So they're going with just a few containers on them. These half-empty, who knows what, from 0% to 40%.
Freight ships from China are coming half-loaded. I mean, that is literally the collapse happening in real time. And of course, CNN is sitting there pretending as if this is somehow bad for America, which sure, in a way, some U.S. companies that are tied to the hip with the Chinese are going to take some short-term damage here. But CNN seems to be missing the forest for the trees. There will be short-term friction, but long-term, this is an absolute death blow to China's economic dominance in the world of manufacturing. They have no leverage. Those manufacturing gaps will eventually be filled, just not by Chinese companies. Other countries will start to rise and China will lose. And this is exactly what we've been saying. It's a realignment. It's painful, sure, at least in the short term, but it's necessary. And the longer China digs their heels in and pumps their chest out, the longer they act as if they're invincible, the more ground they will lose, and people know this. Scott Bessent laid it out perfectly.
You're not going to tell the person on the other side of the negotiation where you're going to end up, and nobody's better at creating this leverage than President Trump. You know, he's shown the high tariffs, and here's the stick. This is where the tariffs can go, and the carrot is come to us, take off your tariffs, take off your non-tariff trade barriers, stop manipulating your currency, stop subsidizing labor and capital, and then we can talk.
Donald Trump is using the leverage that he has, and China's basically the warning sign, and you got these other countries now that are falling in line. And those countries that drop the currency manipulation, the labor subsidies, the BS tariffs, and non-tariff trade barriers, those are the countries that are going to come to negotiate and fill in that manufacturing gap that China is essentially leaving for the pickings. Again, they have absolutely no leverage. And so this idea that slapping a massive tariff on Chinese goods would destroy the American economy and somehow benefit China, well, it was simply never realistic, and it was based on a false premise, a negative week in the stock market.
When I look at some of the things that are being published, there was a story 10 days ago that said this is the worst April for the stock market since the Great Depression. 10 days later, the NASDAQ is now up on the month of April, and I haven't seen a story that says, oh, stock market has biggest bounce back ever.
We are opening up and expanding markets across the world. I'll be in the UK, I'll be in Vietnam, I will be in Japan, I will be in Brazil, I will be in Peru. This is all in just the coming months.
So you see there will be deals with other countries, perhaps, to make up for whatever the problems are with regard to China?
It is going to be a new era of market expansion around the world, and our team is so committed to that. So I think we fix a lot of what's wrong with the China and the Brazil, et cetera, but we also open up new markets. I mean, countries are knocking on our door right now. They want our goods.
Exactly. They said at the start of April that we'd see the worst market collapse since the Great Depression and head into a recession. But now look, the markets have totally bounced back. Trade is realigning. Countries around the world are knocking at America's door. They want to open up their markets to American goods. They want to open up the American market for them to be able to benefit, just like China has over the last decades, from the biggest consumer market in the world. But the media told you Donald Trump wants to isolate America. Doesn't seem like isolation. It seems like America is taking control. And this situation with Apple tells you all that you need to know. It's the proof. You know, for years, China thought that they were untouchable because they were the masters of precision manufacturing. They thought they held the leverage. And even Tim Cook kind of alluded to that.
There's a confusion about China, and let me at least give you my opinion. The popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor cost. I'm not sure what part of China they go to, but the truth is China stopped being the low labor cost country many years ago, and that is not the reason to come to China from a supply point of view. The reason is because of the skill and the quantity of skill in one location and the type of skill it is. The products we do require really advanced tooling, and the precision that you have to have in tooling and working with the materials that we do are state of the art. And the tooling skill is very deep here. In the US, you could have a meeting of tooling engineers and I'm not sure we could fill the room. In China, you could fill multiple football fields. It's that vocational expertise is very deep. And I give the education system a lot of credit for continuing to push on that, even when others were de-emphasizing vocational. Now I think many countries in the world have woke up and said, you know, this is a key thing and we've got to correct that. But China called that right from the beginning.
China wasn't just cheap labor, they were the skilled labor, and that was hard to replicate. But guess what? You can't really have a monopoly on a skill set. That will never be permanent. Eventually, it can be replicated elsewhere, especially when there's enough incentive, enough demand, and enough American leverage to make it happen. You know, China, I think, deluded themselves into thinking that that was leverage. But that's not leverage, that's labor. They had the labor and the skills and the engineers. The true leverage is in the American behemoth economy. And now as China refuses to negotiate, refuses to play fair, refuses to act in good faith, what do you think's going to happen? New players will emerge. India, Vietnam, Mexico, hell, probably even parts of Eastern Europe, and maybe even going into Africa. Countries who are willing to work with America are going to fill in those gaps. China thought they were irreplaceable, but it turns out they are not. And now a company that they thought they'd never lose, that's Apple. Well, they seem to be heading for the exit. Trump announces a brand new deal with India, and then a couple days later, Apple says, we're going to shift all of our manufacturing into India. I think this is just the beginning, folks, and if China doesn't wise up soon, if they don't dance when Donald Trump says dance, they're going to lose a whole lot more than just iPhone manufacturing. FAFO season Global Trade Edition is officially underway. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys on this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.